Do we have audio now? You know what, guys? I bet we do now, don't we? That was unfortunate, but I think we're caught up now. Let's just make sure you guys can hear me now. I bet you can. And we'll restart the podcast here in a second. Everybody got me now? Yeah, all right. Okay, so here we go. Sorry about that. Well, hi, folks. This is Jack Spirko with another episode of Miyagi Mornings. We are up to episode 162 today, and we are going to talk about crypto, kind of our weekly Miyagi that has stuff to do with crypto. But I'm going to come at this from a different angle today, I guess, or a different way. I want to talk about how a crypto token can have value that really doesn't have anything to do with people buying and selling it only. Now, obviously, if somebody won't pay for a thing, then the thing has no value. But I'm talking about the way it can generate value within its ecosystem. Why somebody would pay for it, independent of, oh, I can hold on to this thing and exchange it later on for more money than I put into it now. Like, you buy things all the time, especially when you're buying things as a service, that you get something for it, and then you go on about your life. And can crypto work that way? Or can it be a hybrid where you're buying that, but there is an underlying value? So instead of store of value, can there be value as a service within this? And I believe there can. And I'm going to do this in a couple different ways for you today to help you understand it. Some stuff that's been around a while, and a few things that are really new and really sort of exciting, except one of them involves the state, which I'm no fan of, but I am a fan of, like, this is what's happening, and this is how you can benefit from it, right? So let's start off with what we generally think of when it comes to crypto is, again, you buy this thing because of whatever great story came from it or with it, and it seems like a good idea. And if I hold on to it for a couple of weeks, maybe I can buy a Lamborghini or something. Like, that's where people think value comes from. But I've said from the very beginning, as I started talking about this, and as these alternative coins or altcoins and alternative tokens showed up, what is the utility of the token? And does anybody give a shit? And does it already exist somewhere else? Like, if we can't get past that, then I don't really see the point in having something other than Bitcoin. I call myself a maximalist light, right? So starting out, a search engine came out a while ago, and I've promoted it quite a bit, and it's been profitable for me to do so. It's called Presearch. And Presearch has its own cryptocurrency. And the first two here are more typical of the way this thing has worked. And then I'm going to get into some really innovative stuff as well. But Presearch is very simple. You want to find stuff. So you search. And in return for you using their engine, they pay you in crypto. And then that crypto can accumulate and you can cash it in, or you can use it to buy advertising on the same search engine. And if an advertiser wants to advertise on that search engine, they have to pay for their advertising in their cryptocurrency, their native token called Pre. This is an ERC20 token, so it's built on Ethereum. And you can even basically stake a certain amount in return for getting a certain position for a certain keyword for a certain time. Well, why would you do this? Why wouldn't you just say, hey, you want to buy advertising on our search engine, you pay in dollars, and you redistribute some of those dollars to your users in some sort of a rewards program or something? Well, it's dollars, and it doesn't integrate seamlessly with a search engine. Dollars weren't meant to do that. Why wouldn't you use Bitcoin? Why don't you use Bitcoin and Lightning Network? It's a lot of work to integrate that. You can actually develop the token to work seamlessly with your system. So you have this seamless integration. If something's not working right, the same people that built the search engine developed the currency so they can fix the problem, or they can add features much easier. Or at least, even if you have two different kind of dev groups, they are in the same organization. They can talk to each other. Plus, if I'm going to reward my users, and then I'm going to do dollars or Bitcoin, I have to go out and buy it versus letting the platform develop the value itself. And it's been pretty good to me using it and recommending it, because they pay you to use it. They also pay you to refer others to it. So I've got a good little stack of pre. Now, will pre be worth a lot of money someday? I don't know. I have no idea. Will Presearch really take on? I don't know. But one of the interesting things that just came out in the news yesterday is Google added Presearch to the default search engine options for Android devices in Europe and the UK. Now, that may not sound like a big deal, but it's kind of a big deal. Because what it means is you're going to have literally millions of people exposed to the fact that this thing even exists and figure out, hey, I could get a little bit of this crypto every time I use this search engine, and that builds loyalty to the search engine. And in the article that I have linked in the video notes, you'll see that the justification for this is basically the EU has been kind of cracking down on Google, saying you can't create your own monopoly within your own device. So they need to add some other search engines. But don't you think that Google might figure out a way to monetize the traffic that goes through Presearch with an agreement between them that has to do with crypto back and forth? So if they got to add something, why not add something that they can still profit from? So that's interesting. I'm not saying to go out and buy a bunch of pre or anything, but I'm just saying that's an interesting use case. Another use case, I bet you many of you guys have used it, right? The Brave browser. Do you use the Brave browser? Well, the basic attention token has been in existence since, I think, 2016 or 2017. It was around during the 2017-2018 explosive boom of a bazillion altcoins, and it's one of the ones that's still here. And the reason is they built a platform that actually works. The way that Brave works in conjunction with the basic attention token, this is another ERC20 Ethereum-based token, is that when you use the Brave browser, if you're willing to, use these little advertisements. They come up in the corner of your screen, like right up there, right up where it says the Survival Podcast here. And they're just little advertisements. And those advertisers have to pay in crypto. And you get paid by being willing to receive advertisements in crypto. You get a piece of the advertising. And, I don't know, average internet user probably adds up to 4 or 5 BAT a month. Not a huge amount of money. It's under $1 a unit, but you didn't do anything that you weren't going to do anyway. We see ads all the time. And then it blocks other advertisements, which is nice, and prevents pop-ups, and it's secure. And they're not spying on you the way that Google is with Chrome, and they just got caught doing that. But by having this token that's native to that ecosystem, they create this seamless interaction. And the only thing that I've not liked about it, because I do well with basic attention token as well. Not only do I use it and get that little 4 or 5 a month, a lot of people, they get their Brave tokens and they're like, I really didn't do anything for this. I know there's some value to it, but when I visit other websites, like I value those sites. So I'm willing to transfer the value I was given and give it to some of these sites. So people will set up like, here's my 5 sites and divide it up against how many times I view those sites in a month and distribute whatever Brave I have or X amount of Brave to these people. Or they'll just say, I want to support this site with my Brave or whatever. So I'll make another $50 or $60 worth of Brave every month from people that do that because I have a high traffic website. So now the advertiser's paying for access, the user's receiving value, and the user's transferring the value to the content provider that they like. I don't know how you do that as seamlessly and integrated as they've done it without a native token. The issue's been getting the money out's been stupid. They use a company called Uphold. It's been a pain in the butt. But like Gemini is an exchange, a crypto exchange, and they've just made a deal with Brave where you can get your BAT straight over to that exchange, which means you can then either hold it, withdraw it to a wallet, or convert it to something you find more value in, like Bitcoin. So now I can take my BAT, immediately convert it over to Bitcoin, which means now that BAT is in the free market, so an advertiser can buy it to use to buy advertising. We're creating this holistic environment of value to value to value exchange. Content providers. Without content providers, nobody's on the internet in the first place. Advertisers. Without advertisers coming into this and bringing new money into it, it doesn't actually earn anything. Users. Without users absorbing the content, there's no value. And users seeing the advertisements, If that's not there, there's no value either. But the value is now being shared across the platform, the content provider, the advertiser, and the user, instead of only being sucked into one hole. And again, I don't know how you would do that without using a native. I don't know how you would do it as effectively and seamlessly if you were to use some third-party crypto there. Okay. Now, I would say that both of these platforms are also being tempted into doing this through the ability to do what? To print their own money without going into public, trading stocks and all the crap that goes with that, which is a dadgone nightmare. And in particular, Brave got in under the wire where you could do an ICO without it being illegal, right? They got in a time to be able to do it. So there is that. But there are other ways that a chain can become valuable and produce value that have nothing even to do with kind of that direct relationship we've talked about so far, or printing money. Because that, in essence, it's what it is. You're printing money, but you're letting the money you print, instead of when the government prints money, the new money takes value from the old money. Most people here, I think, are able to understand that, right? But when a crypto company comes out and prints money, that money only has value if people decide that it has value, use it, trade it, etc. So it has to actually do something to get value if the value is real. And good Lord, the thumbnail for today's episode says nothing of value, real value is free. And I want you to think about that as we go to the next one. Really interesting story came out yesterday about a cryptocurrency called Algorand. And Algorand is a crypto that is a proof of stake coin. It's very innovative. It was developed by a cryptographer. I can't think of his name, but he's out of MIT. This guy is like massively talented guy, huge amounts of awards in the space of cryptography and what have you. And I won't get into how, but I'm just telling you, it is one of the most secure proof of stake cryptos that could ever have been devised. The way that it works, I don't see how anybody would ever be able to hack it, or stakers would be able to behave badly or what have you, because literally a short version is the validators that will validate the next block are chosen about 10 seconds before that block is validated. And then the next block, it happens again, and it's different people every time. And it's really, really innovative, and it's super fast, it's super light, and it's super cheap to use. Again, I'm not saying go out and invest in any of this stuff, right? I'm just telling you what it does so you can understand what I mean when I say what's the utility. So you'd look at this and say, well, it's really great for payments because Bill can send money to Steve and it's super cheap and it's super fast, so it competes with Bitcoin because it's faster and cheaper. I don't think that is a valid means of competing with Bitcoin at this point. I'm not going to get into it today, but there are ways to make fast, cheap payments with Bitcoin. Mostly in the developed world, we're not using Bitcoin for payments anyway. We're using it as a store of value. So you got to do something else. Because Litecoin is faster and cheaper than Bitcoin. So what can Algorand do? Let's think about the word transaction differently. So the news story that came out yesterday was the government of El Salvador, who recently made huge news because they adopted Bitcoin as legal tender, just made a deal with Algorand. Well, why would they do that? They're going to use they're not going to use it as legal tender. They're not going to use it as money. They're going to use the Algorand network for public records keeping. Now think about that. So public records might be something like who owns the title to a car, who owns the title to a building, things like that. These are things that are not, when you talk about security with them, the security you're talking about is not security as a form of privacy. They're public records. Right? So they would go on a public blockchain. If I have your VIN number right now, I can find out all kinds of information about your vehicle, including you and who owns it and who actually has the title to it if you financed it. So that's all public anyway. So security there isn't about keeping people from seeing it. There's two types of security that you'd worry about with hacking there. One would be you don't want anybody able to change it. You want it immutable. You want it uncensorable. We generally think about the uncensorable nature of a blockchain is benefiting us against like giant corporations and government. Turns out government might actually want things to be uncensorable themselves, like who owns a thing, right? Like, so this actually could then kind of work in the world of NFTs if we weren't doing stupid shit with NFTs like we talked about last week, the one I'll talk about today. But you remember I said like we could tokenize the title of a car, run that on something like the Algorand blockchain with a smart contract that says you bought the car from Chevy and you use GM financing, and that smart contract's in there. And the day you make the last payment, the title ownership transfers from Chevy to you automatically. Now, the other security you want for this is you don't want to be locked out. If you think about ransomware, a lot of times with ransomware, it's not, we have all this data and we can use it to harm you and we'll give it back. Because how do you know they didn't make a copy of it? It's they get into a network and they lock the people that need access to the network out. Now imagine you're a country and your public records database, you lock people out, like you can't get into it. You can't see it. You can't touch it. So you want security from the standpoint of, I don't want it changed and I don't want to be locked out of it. So what you do is you take the Algorand network of all this validation and all this security and all this cryptography, and you allow it to provide security to your network so it can be accessed, you can't be locked out of it, and you can trust the data on it. Well, that's secure. You're paying. Nothing of real value is free. You have to pay for security. That's how it works. So then who gets paid? All the people that hold Algorand, that act as stakers, right, as validators, get paid through the staking process. That's already there. So the reason a country would do this is the same reason countries don't, build their own computers or build their own computer networks. Countries have vendors to do this. But what if instead of a vendor, you had a blockchain that could be trusted because it's decentralized? And then think about this whole, we're going to ban crypto. Well, if this type of adoption starts to take place, how are you going to ban something that the government that's going to ban it is using, and they need people to be actually actively engaged for it to work? I'm not saying it'll happen everywhere. I'm saying El Salvador is doing it. Now, we could move into a place like the United States. Things are a little different, right? So if you buy a car in Florida, your car is registered and the title is registered in Florida, not the United States. What if I'm going to sell a car from Florida to somebody in Texas, and there's intermediary holding the title, right? GM, right? Financing. But the new financee is going to be Frost National Bank in Texas, and the new owner is going to be Tom in Texas versus Frank in Florida. Well, that's not going to work straight Algorand if Florida is using ERC20 Ethereum tokens, which they might, and Texas is using, let's say, Algorand. Well, that's where you can get into cross-validation technology, something like Cosmos, another blockchain that not only could do all the things we just talked about doing with Algorand, so slightly differently, it can also create this bridge between these sovereign networks and allow them to talk to each other so all that could be executed automatically. And of course, there'd be some sort of cost to run the blockchain in Florida on ERC20. That's going to be Ethereum staking once that becomes available. And maybe Texas, it's being staked through Algorand, and that's providing the security, visibility, interconnectability, immutability, right? And then maybe you have something like this other technology acting as a smart bridge, smart contract connector between the two. Now, you got to pay for that, right? Nothing of real value is free. Well, Cosmos works through staking as well. So here's where I start to actually differ from this debate that we often have with people that are big fans of proof of work. And they say proof of work is more secure, etc. If you're trying to secure the token itself as a thing of value, then you probably are right that proof of work is better. There has to be you want a discrepancy to use proof of work. That's what Bitcoin uses. That's what Litecoin uses, right? So the miners are competing with each other, right? If you want speed and you want reliability, and you're not at a point where like, I want this one Bitcoin to be able to exist in my little hard drive in Belarus, and I don't want anybody able to get it, and I want a more broad type of security, I want a more broad type of application, then actually what benefits the network most is not competition, but collaboration. Now I need a way to keep collaborators honest. And things like Algorand, things like Cosmos, things like Polkadot, right? These proof of stake validation level networks that can be a layer 1 network, and meaning they can operate on their own. They can also move up in hierarchy and operate as level 2 or even level 3 technologies with interoperability. If you want fast, light, quick, cheap, then you don't want everybody fighting each other. You want everybody cooperating, but you want to be able to keep the cooperation honest. And this is why I will throw a little bit here for you at the end with Algorand from a technology standpoint. What they do is incredibly intelligent. And this guy's name is like Silvaki, Mikilo, like is his first name. I just never can actually say his name right, so I don't say it. This guy's a genius in what he did, in that you have all these stakers all over the network, and I think it's 10-second blocks. And each time a block is confirmed, the validators for the next block are selected at random from the entire network and validate the next block, and then so on and so on. There's literally no one who stays a validator long enough to behave badly, nor do they have time to get ready to behave badly. And you certainly can't do some sort of so what you would say about a network that's proof of stake. And, another currency I've liked in the past, but this is a weakness, ARC. So ARC has something like 48 validators. Well, if you knew who all the 48 validators are, couldn't you run something like a dedicated denial of service attack on just those people so that they can't keep your network running? Well, if your network is a million different options and you're using 100 out of a million every 10 seconds at random, how the hell do you DDoS that? And the answer is you don't. So I think maybe it's not the end all be all with tech here, but I think that when we start moving into these types of value-based service, when you look at Bitcoin and people say, well, Ether can do this or whatever, and they're talking about technology versus underlying value. And I think Bitcoin wins that. But when you start talking about providing services, even if a lot of those will eventually come from Bitcoin, these types of interoperable, validatable, securable networks that can be basically think of it as buying cloud computing power and having a certain level of guarantee of security and safety, right? And not be locked out of it. Think about if you build a social media platform on blockchain, what do you say so great about it? Nobody can censor it. Well, what if you have a network you don't want anybody locked out of? To be hacker-proof, not from the people getting the data, but again, locking you out of it so it can't be used, so you can shut down the commerce of a country or a state. Think of it, if you can hack into the public records access and lock everybody out of it, you can't sell a car. You can't transfer a property, etc. But if you can secure that network to the point where anybody from anywhere can access it because it's public data anyway, how do you hack it now? How do you shut it down? You can't. It's uncensorable. And again, we don't think of states wanting things to be uncensorable, and generally they don't, but when it benefits them, they do. And with that, we'll be back tomorrow with another episode for you. And I will hang for just a bit here if anybody has any questions about any of this stuff. I do want to, again, point out, I'm not saying to go out and buy any of this stuff. Nothing I do is financial advice, but sometimes I'm like, it's not financial advice, but I'm invested in this and I think it makes sense. This is just straight up generalized information today as to how, because people they look at this and they're like, I don't understand. It's backed by vaporware. I don't know. I think it's pretty cool to be able to say we can deploy a blockchain that would do inventory control within your network or in your company. So imagine a big company, 10,000 people in it, and every piece of gear that moves around between departments needs to be accounted for. You don't need a proof of work mining network to do that, but you probably would benefit from doing something that's less susceptible to corruption than a centralized corporate database. And you could have privacy integrated into this and provided as a service. Now, if you do that with blockchain, you'll want to do it with something along the lines of a proof of stake. You don't want to do it with proof of work. You don't want to compete. You don't want to slow it down. You want it as fast and cheap as possible. Well, how do you do that? You have hundreds or thousands of people that can't even see what you're doing because you want it private, but providing you the service of keeping it safe, keeping it secure, keeping it fast, keeping it cheap, not free. So you could end up at some point holding on to something like Algorand, Cosmos, ADA, whatever. And you're getting these staking rewards. And it's not so that Bill can send Tom Cosmos. It's so that freaking Florida can talk to Texas and execute smart contracts that enable a car to be sold between two state residents. Or for property transfer for a non-state resident to hold property within another state. That could be, so it's Florida or Texas taxpayers, honestly, that are paying the bill. Does that make sense? Do you know of a privacy-based proof-of-stake token in the works or already available? The only proof-of-stake token I know that markets itself as a privacy coin is called Ghost. John McAfee was involved with it. Let's get that question up here on the screen. McAfee was involved with it. They paid him basically to shill it for them, and then they kicked him out because of his mouth. He just, I'm sad he's gone and all, but he did have a big mouth. And even after they kicked him out, he still said he thought it was a really great currency. And the way Ghost works is the transaction happens and then it vanishes. That's what they call it, Ghost. I've not been impressed with it enough to buy it. And I don't think that that's what you would want in most proof-of-stake currencies that would be used the way we talked about today. You'd want that currency auditable because we're not trying to let Bill and Steve send money privately. I think if you're doing that, you want to do a Monero or an R. I think now we're talking about currency to currency, peer-to-peer. When we're doing peer-to-peer currency, change of value, party one to party two, I'm back in the world of Bitcoin protocol. And if Bitcoin could be 100% private, I don't know that we would need a Monero or an R or what have you. But it's not. And the ways it can be more private are not 100%. And optional privacy is not real privacy. So I don't know that there really is a good option there. But from the way I'm talking about today, I don't think it makes sense. Here we go. Toger says that Algo has decent returns on staking. Yeah, I think it's like 6 or 7%, something like that. It's way better than a bank account, and it goes up and down. But you got to start thinking about these proof of stake tokens if they have use cases. And this is what I like about Algo. Go check out Algorand's website. Go look at their use cases and go look at the sheer number of corporations, public entities, NGOs, governments that they've created these relationships with. I mean, a lot of people don't know this. Like the most important stable coin in the world right now is USDT, Tether, right? It's just Tether is stupid expensive to move because most people are running Tether on ERC20. You can actually run Tether on Algo. So basically, Algo functions for Tether the way Ether functions for Tether. And then you can move Tether lightning fast for almost nothing. I watched a video one time. There were 4 guys, and they started out in North America, and they sent $5 worth of Tether around like to each other. So started in North America, went to Europe, let's say went to Australia, went to South America, back to North America in a minute and a half. And I think it was like $4.95 when it got back. It was, and that's all those fees, right? So they've cut deals with Tether so that exchanges can stop having it cost people the dear Lord's fortune to move Tether around. Now, I think all this high gas Ether fee shit goes away very soon once we have Ether 2.0. But how much does Ether lose while this is all going on and they can't get their shit straight? And the longer they take, the more of these things get picked off by, Cardano, Polkadot, Cosmos, Algorand, etc. But the one that's been really, I'm going to call it sneaky in a good way about it, has been Algo. If you want to know all these relationships that they formed, it's there. It's on their website. You can go read test case, use case, etc. Exactly what they're doing, how they're doing it. You can go look at all the logos, all the brands. It's huge amount of deals that have been cut. but they're not really hiring PR agencies. Like, you don't see it in the news as much. Like, Cardano is in crypto news, like Cardano. Like, they're out mouthpiecing it, and that's like a pump move to me. You're trying to pump up the underlying price of your crypto. And I'm not financial advising here. I'm just saying, when you look at what Algo's doing, it's like, yeah, we're just going to go keep making and cutting these deals and keep building the underlying value of the user. When people use it, they pay for it, and then the holder benefits. I honestly prefer yield farming. Good luck. I think it's actually a good way to go. But I don't think it's the same thing. And I think yield farming is not hitting what I'm talking about today. Yield farming is people leveraging borrowing to buy, to leverage, to borrow, to buy options and try not to get called out. And people are paying you interest to borrow your crypto. And if you're doing it right, as the lender, there's almost no way you can lose. That's fine. But what's the underlying value? And to me, all you have is a bunch of speculators speculating. And I'm going to tell you, my one concern with these yield farms and all this stuff is there will come a day of reckoning. And you have to watch it closely. It's not all autopilot, and there are ways to lose. And I think there will come a day when these like 90% of all tokens that are useless, like, it's realized that they're useless. And how much of that leverage is leveraged into the useless? And what happens when it all starts coming down? And I mean, I'm going to tell you, I really think that your two biggest dangers right now, one is all this leverage for all these bets that have no basis. Like, you can leverage into Dogecoin and make a lot of money. Dogecoin's still a piece of shit that's useless and worthless that only dumbass kids are buying enough to pump it up for right now. Sooner or later, when reality sets in, what's even worse, though, at least Dogecoin performs a function. You can send money with Doge. It's cheap. It's fast. It works. Okay, great. Wouldn't want to hold it, but if I was on a service and people paid me in Dogecoin, I'm fine with that because I can dump it into Bitcoin. Fine. As long as it works, it works. I'm not going to hold it. But at least it does that. NFTs, guys. NFTs are tulip mania. NFTs are the real tulip mania. And I'm not talking about some of these tech we talked about today that could be NFT-like or actually use NFTs. Like, the tech is not the problem. Serializing a freaking red square and selling it for a dumbass for $200 is tulip mania. And there's going to come a point when all these people that bought gifts and all this shit can't trade them anymore. And then the ego purchase, I have the official gif of LeBron James scratching his ass or whatever. Like, the ego thing that made you buy that wears off. Like, how many of you guys collected baseball cards and football cards and shit when you were kids? And maybe there's like 1% of all of them that you ever had, touched, or looked at that still hold value today because they actually are something rare, like a rookie card of a guy that excelled, and like he sucked his first 5 years, so nobody knew he was going to excel, so all the cards got damaged, and like that's that little tiny piece of it. But all that other shit you had, you're like, I don't give a shit about that anymore. I wish I could find some dumbass to buy it. What happens when you have a multi-billion-dollar electronic market leverage and that reality sets in? Death. Those are your two biggest dangers to crypto. And it's why I don't get involved with a lot of things that touch them. I don't really want to be involved with things that touch them. I want to be able to say, who gains value from this? And I want to be able to quantify that as an actual value. Being able to secure my network, being able to handle interdepartmental expenses through a proof of stake, I can see the value there. Doesn't mean that Bill's crypto will win out over Tom's crypto, but I get the use case. Lending money so somebody can buy something that's a shit coin so I can make interest, and I'm fine as long as enough people win that it doesn't collapse. No, not me. I'm not putting it down, but you can do it, and it can be profitable. But boy, you better stay on it, because sooner or later we are going to pay for all this crap. I do not see many comments except Tom over on Odyssey saying, I guess the comment stream is going bonkers. I'm not sure what that means, because I don't see many comments over there. And I don't see any comments on Float, even though we have some people on Float. Anyway, I'm going to log off. I've got a guest that I got to get ready for. And what are we going to talk about today? Dave Deniston will be on today. He has a podcast called Land Stories. He's also the managing partner, CEO for Generation Family Properties. And we're going to talk about on the podcast today, tspc.co, thesurvivalpodcast.com. Either way, you can get there. All things raw land, the benefits of purchasing raw land, creating affordable options so others can own their dream land, and how do you ensure your property has a clean title, because until all this crypto stuff gets done, that's still a pain in the ass. And so we'll be going with that. I'll start that interview around noon my time, which is about 40 minutes from now, and it should be live on the website and on the syndication services 2:30, 3 o'clock. Anyway, guys, take care, and we will be back with you tomorrow.